Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today, and I got a great interview for you. One of the things I like to do is keep an eye on contest prep progress photos on Instagram, and I look at people at shows, and I want to see who's doing well at the local and regional shows and find out who the coaches are. And there's one guy, his name keeps popping up all over the place, and it's Mike Ryan White. And I wanted to get this dude on and talk to him and find out what the hell he's doing. His people keep placing well, winning shows, looking fantastic, coming in ripped. He works with a lot of bikini competitors, also works with other people as well. But the common thread here, this dude gets people in shape, and I've heard from people that he also helps them with their digestive issues, and I wanted to get him on. Mike is a PhD candidate, I believe, in nutrition. He goes into detail in the interview. But one of the things I liked in this interview, and I find often when I talk to people, there are people that are incredibly book smart and can recite studies and information, but they have zero ability to take that information and apply it and do any sort of critical thinking or problem solving. I think problem solving is probably the most important aspect of being a successful contest prep coach or physique coach, because we run into all sorts of situations that don't fit into a set set paradigm. We have to adjust on the fly. We have to think critically about what problems could be unique to that person and adjust our protocols and plans for that person. And Mike is a guy, and I discovered this from talking to him, that is a critical thinker and has an incredible thought process when it comes to problem solving. And I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Mike was fantastic. I hope to have him on again sometime. Really enjoyed talking shop with him. I think a lot of his philosophies align with mine, and I learned a couple new things when I was on the episode with him. I really enjoyed talking to Mike. He's a bright young man with a great future ahead of him. I hope you enjoy this one. All right, folks, I am here with Mr. Mike Ryan White. We talked about it beforehand. I know you go by Mike White, but Mike Ryan White sounds cooler, dude.
Yeah, it's a little easier. Mike White is 1 degree of separation from John Smith, so I guess the Ryan sets me apart a little.
Common white man name.
Yeah, dude, it's trust me, I've heard it my whole life. I won't do it to my kids though. They'll get a cooler first name than
Hey,
that.
I'm Paul, man. That's pretty common too. So
Yeah, yeah,
one of the like 10 common white guy names.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to get you on, man. I've been following you from a distance. I try to follow smart people that seem to get results. I like that combination, smart and gets results. So I've seen you do some just great work with people on contest prep. And I know we were talking like in advance. You said you've never actually competed, right?
No, no, dude.
It's
So I
amazing, man.
I kind of fell totally ass backwards into all of this. So I hurt myself competing in powerlifting, and I need to like get some rehab done after a
Hmm.
surgery. And I was like, well, what better time to work on my physique than when I can't really lift these maximal weights? So I hired my first bodybuilding coach, and he and I would just talk all the time about different theory and whatever different like made up scenarios I would come to him with. And then a guy in my gym just heard me consistently talking about these thoughts and my approach to things, and asked if I would prep him. And I was like, hey man, I have no idea what I'm doing, but sure, I'll prep you. And for his first show, he won his class. And then it just kind of took off from there. Name started spreading a little bit, got some referrals, and just kept growing my skill set, growing what I could do with my clients.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that with a lot of the top coaches in bodybuilding. A lot of them have not competed.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to problem solving, and you're clearly a smart guy. You're working on your PhD, right?
So I was, and then I got to finishing like my candidacy. So I'm sure you know from being friends with Kurt, you finish all your courses and all the
Hmm.
exams and stuff like that, and then you have your dissertation. Um, and I got to the point where I finished all my courses, and I could start my dissertation and I'd probably hang out at school for another 2 or 3 years. Or, the coaching really started picking up. I was working in the supplement industry as well. And I was like, I'm looking at my professors going, I don't know how much more this doctorate is going to open up doors for me. I think the time spent on a dissertation, if I put that into my business and like growing my skill set more than it was now, it'll probably be better off for me. And on top of that, I was doing my doctorate in rural southwestern Virginia. So there was not much there for me. And
You were at Tech, right?
yeah, I was at Tech, and like I loved my professors. I loved the people that I was around, but just like geographically, I was super unhappy. So
Well, I grew up in rural western parts of Virginia. I know that life.
yeah, yeah. So after a few months of just like sitting and stewing on it, I was like, I can always go back to school.
Yep.
I can't always have this opportunity to, fulfill a passion of mine and like make a living while doing it. So I'm taking a break. Who knows if I'll go back or when I'll go
Oh,
back.
you'll finish up at some point. Everybody
Yeah,
always does.
I
I mean,
probably will.
you're almost at the finish line. I believe Kurt is. I think he submitted his
Okay.
final.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he's finishing up now
Yeah.
or working on finishing up.
Yeah.
What were you studying?
So there's what I was studying, what I tell people. So the long-winded version of it was human nutrition, food, and exercise
Oh,
with a
that's cool.
concentration in clinical physiology. So really long term. I just tell people I was studying nutrition and exercise physiology. It's a little easier to understand.
Yeah, man, if I had it to go back over again, I would love to study nutrition or biochemistry.
Yeah.
I ended up going down the computer science route. It paid well,
Yeah.
but it was kind of a miserable existence for a long time.
Yeah. Funny enough,
Um,
computer science is where I started. I was like robotics team in high school, studying computer science in undergrad, and then kind of the same thing that made me drop out of the PhD, made me switch to exercise science. Was like, I'm just not super stoked doing this anymore. So I changed to exercise science.
well, it's all a problem solving mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes good, like the guys that are really good coaches, or ladies and men, the people that are really good coaches are problem solvers
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
Take an issue, deconstruct it, try to think through it. I mean, and that's that programmatic thinking that you have if you're a computer guy or an engineer or science guy. I think that sometimes people are too absolute. Like that's the one thing I noticed, like with some people that are super sciencey, they get too absolute with things, where there's still just some shit we don't know,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the marriage of anecdote and science, because there is some stuff, and it, man, from bodybuilding that doesn't shouldn't work on paper, but it just fucking does.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that like I like talking about is the term like evidence based doesn't just mean reading the results section of a study or like an abstract. Evidence based is kind of a overlap of a few things. One of which is research. Another one is anecdote from the coach, or when we talk about evidence-based medicine, it's like the practitioner. And then also like your athletes or clients preferences, all of that matters, and you have to take bits and pieces of all of that to kind of formulate your evidence base. So sometimes we don't have answers for the questions we have, and sometimes things we do, you're like, why the hell did this even work? I don't understand why it did, but it did. So
Yep. Yeah, that happens. I mean, it's, I am ultimately, I'm the guy that wants to take the TV apart and understand every part of it, and why it
yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So like I have a really hard time with that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I need to deconstruct things and understand why.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes there's just some shit we just know works, and we do it.
Yep.
Well, whatever you're doing, you're getting good results with your clients.
Thank
Your
you, man.
clients
Yeah.
look amazing. Let's walk through your process a little bit. I mean,
Mhm.
I want to hear kind of your thought process on contest prep and your
Mhm.
approach to it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really like doing is actually before contest prep even starts, assuming we have the time, is to do like a pre-prep cleanup where if we're coming out of an off season, we can maybe spend 8 or so weeks pulling down some body fat and then rinse off a little bit of that like diet fatigue for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then we can get into prep. Just so that way we're starting a little leaner, but we're also still fresh. We haven't been running the throttle for that whole 12-week stretch. And then we can start contest prep in a little bit of a better spot. And then as far as like nutrition, one of the biggest things that I've started doing here in the last year or so that I've had a lot of success with is the way I previously set up my diets would be we'd have a training day diet and a non-training day diet. On top of that, you maybe have a high day. That just depends on the person.
So essentially carb or caloric cycling.
Yeah, yeah. So, the average person is probably training 4 or 5 times a week. So we have 2 or 3 non-training days. And what I end up doing is when we start contest prep, we switch from training and non-training to high and low days. So we take that non-training day diet, we do it 5 days a week, and then we do the training day diet, we just call it a high day, and we do that back to back. So that's how I start kind of the nutritional thing because you're still feeling really good in the beginning. So we can kind
Mhm.
of take a bit more aggressive of an approach at the beginning and still be fresh. So we kind of rip down calories pretty quick there. And then I bump up cardio by about 30%, just kind of right off the rip. And so that way, we're starting off feeling really fresh, pretty energized. We're already a bit leaner because we did that pre-prep kind of cleanup, and we're getting a little aggressive on the front of preps. Then we can kind of slow down at the end and kind of feed you up a little bit into the end.
Yeah, and that's sort of it's funny that I've been talking to a lot of the top guys lately, and everybody sort of has independently come to the same conclusion. Like, don't
Uh,
go into prep fat,
yep.
have a little bit of a cleanup going in. And I've been doing the same thing this year. I'll take like a 6 or 8 week period and just kind of clean people up a little bit. I try not to let guys get fat in the off season.
Yeah.
I think in the past I've probably gotten too aggressive with the food in the off season. Like, I don't think you need as much as you think you do.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting. Like, there's a couple different philosophies out there, but a lot of the guys that seem to get people super shredded are aggressive in the early part of the prep and
Mhm.
then pull back at the end and put food back in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I try to do the same thing. Obviously, not all the time can we do that, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
case by case, right? Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, even with some of my women, like right now, I have a bikini girl getting ready to compete this weekend. And at the tail end of prep, she was averaging more food than she was in her peak off season. Like we were having multiple days in a row where I'd say, all right, you're not doing cardio today. We're going to add like 350 carbs on top of your diet. And,
That's wild on a bikini
and
competitor.
yeah, and go out for a meal. So we do all of that in the same day, and the next day she'd be like, "Hey, Mike, I'm 2.5 pounds lighter." So like, it's one of those things that we just talked about where on paper we don't really get why it works, but sometimes their whether it's their metabolism ramps up or whatever it might be, whatever you want to call it. It seems like if you get them lean pretty early, it seems like they can just tolerate so much more food and they can show up at their show just looking a bit more fresh and put together.
I mean, insulin sensitivity is going to be high, gastric emptying is going to be high. If you have any
Yeah.
metabolic aids in place,
Yeah,
that's also a factor.
certainly.
I tend to be that way, man. I'm usually eating more the last few weeks of my prep than I am in peak off season. My
Yeah.
metabolism just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Then I got dudes that I coach that I'm just grinding till the last minute, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I've
feel
some of those
bad for
right now
those
too.
guys.
Yeah, I'm not envious of that. It seems like people at the end they just end up on a protein and veggie diet for a couple
Yeah.
weeks, and that sucks.
The old cod and asparagus that the bodybuilders would do 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man. I remember. I mean, you're too young to remember that, but that was like the late '90s, early 2000s, man. That was the bodybuilding diet, cod and asparagus, man.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Fish thins the skin.
Yeah, that old bullshit.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's funny. I saw somebody post something about that the other day that there was some scientific justification for it, but like I've always thought with it, it's really the lowest fat animal protein source you can get.
Well, and then especially like, a lot of the old diets, they would just go 1 for 1 from chicken to fish. So if you do 10 ounces chicken to 10 ounces fish, it's way less fat, but it's also less protein per ounce. So
Yeah,
it's just overall net far lower calories.
yeah, lower
That's all
calories.
it is.
Yeah, that's
All
all
it
it is at
is.
the end of the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was always my take on it too. I mean, because there's even chickens aren't made in a lab, man. So like body fat's different from chicken breast to chicken breast, but I mean there's probably 4 or 5 grams of fat in a chicken breast.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe more, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on the chicken, whereas, there might be 1 or 2 in a piece of cod, and you add that up over 6 meals, man, you're talking about,
Mhm.
30, 40 grams of fat difference, man.
Totally.
That's a pound of fat burn a
Yeah,
week, man.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to do the math off the top of my head, like 2,200 calories over the course of a week. That's
Mhm.
pretty significant.
Yeah, especially at the end,
Yep.
especially at the end of a prep.
Yeah, especially at the end. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, that seems, and I've always kind of wondered this too, man. Like going into, like, when do people always say they look the best?
Dude, I find like outside of peaked and in shape, the best people always look is like 2 weeks out and then a few days post show. And
Yeah,
I'm a huge believer. It's just because the stress of competing is gone at 2 weeks out, maybe like 2.5 weeks out. It's not so occupying in your mind as it is 3 days out. And then once the show is over, you have a little bit of food, you can sleep better. You end up waking up a couple days later. You're like, what the hell? What happened to me? I look amazing.
it's been interesting, dude. I've been doing a mentorship with AJ Sims, who I think
Okay.
gets people more shredded than anybody else
Uh-huh.
out there. I mean, he gets people fucking conditioned on stage, and I wanted to pick his brain about his secrets. And I was fully expecting there to be some secret protocol at the end, and it's literally what you just said. He really focuses on stress management at the end,
Mhm.
trying to get people sleeping, making sure digestion's good, pulling the cardio, having them ready early,
Yep.
pulling the cardio back, and just managing all those things to bring a better look to the stage. And it's just, I mean, the answer is right there in front of us. Yeah, but it's the same thing, man. I've always seen people look their best 2 weeks out or a few days post
Yeah.
show.
I even with some of my people that work maybe more physical laborious jobs or they're on their feet a lot, I will actually see like, hey, can you take a few days off work before the show? Because like the people that I have in peak week right now, it's Monday. They're doing their last cardio session either today or tomorrow. Some of them haven't trained legs in a week at this point. If they're training back, their last back day was either today or yesterday. So all the stuff that's really more damaging and has this like cumulative fatiguing effect, I try to really pull off hard about a week out. And if they can also take off some work, I'm like, hey man, just like take naps. I'll even pull out a lot of the fat burners. So
Yep.
if they're using like a clenbuterol or ephedrine or yohimbine or anything like that, I'll pull all of that way back or even totally all the way out just so they can get better sleep. I'll tell them cool it on the caffeine, all of that sort of jazz, just because that stress management is massive. I don't really think it can be overstated how important it is to get someone to like an ideal peaked physique.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we're guilty of being a victim of our own work ethics. I know I have been in the past where I've just ground myself to the bone all the way up until the show, and then it's just not a good look.
Yeah, well, also like if you're competing on a Saturday, the odds of the cardio sessions that you could be hammering out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, making a massive difference in terms of your body fat is pretty low, but the amount of, you know, whether it's water or whatever you want to call it,
Stress. Yeah.
yeah, that how that's going to affect your physique is much more than the body fat you could be burning. So I'd rather you just take that time off.
Yeah, that's a very insightful way of looking at it, and that's sort of the conclusion I've come to as well.
Mhm.
I mean, if you aren't ready by 7 to 10 days out, you aren't ready. It's
Right.
just pick another show.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because otherwise you're gonna have to do some weird Hail Mary bullshit during peak week. And
It doesn't work.
it never works. It never works.
And with your process of peaking people, what are you doing on peak week?
Yeah. So when I first started, I kind of had no idea what I'm doing or was doing rather. And I would do a bit of a fat load in the beginning of the week and then I would carb them up at the end. I wouldn't really take much consideration into anything like with their salt. I would just kind of standardize it with their fluids as well. I would just standardize it. I used to have this chart that was based off of body weight, but the more I've done it and the more I've learned from mentors of mine like Dom Kuza or Mike Nassif, I do less stuff necessarily scaled off body weight, and it's more of collecting data on the person a few weeks out. So it's seeing how much water or total fluid are you consuming on a day-to-day basis, and let's get a rolling average of that from like 2 weeks out. And then how much sodium are you consuming on a day-to-day basis, and then let's standardize those things leading into peak week, just so that we have less variables to maneuver through. I still do the fat load, I still do the carb load at the end, but I also don't rush the carb load as much as I used to. I used to try to just, like, let's say you compete Saturday, just carb up Friday and then show up Saturday and be good. But now, kind of the method that I prefer is we start working carbs up at the beginning of the week slowly. Um, and then, Wednesday, Thursday, we can get a little more aggressive with it. Friday, if we need to, we can continue carbing up. But ideally, we wake up Friday and have a look that we really like. And then we can just make our meals to hold that look until the next day. But I know not a lot of people really like the fats in their peak week. I think it really adds like a nice look, and it helps people hold on to some of those carbs. And the intramuscular triglycerides are going to be super depleted from prepping, and that adds to our muscle volume. So why not, add some fats back in for people?
Yeah, I always add fats back into that, and you just feel better.
Yeah. Well, and dude, when you're super depleted like that, and someone says, "Hey, go have 20 grams of peanut butter," you're over the moon. So again, it kind of ties back to that stress thing. There's also that psychological benefit of the food, of getting to enjoy some fats that you haven't been able to have in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll usually add a little bit of fattier meat back in, and maybe
Mhm.
some nut butter or something at the end.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy, but just
Right.
just to help people. It seems like it freshens people up, and then they feel better.
Yeah.
Like people, as soon as you put the fats back in, they got. At least that's been my anecdote. People will, within a day or two, will say, "I feel so much better."
Yeah. Well, and their GI starts working a little bit better as well. So that helps, with our look. We don't have as, bloated guts when we have stuff that's able to actually move through the GI tube.
Well, yeah, your turds are like sawdust at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, the ash content of your stool is so high because it's like everything's just been zapped from it, and your colon's all
Yeah.
dried out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing to lube anything up. I
Yeah.
remember coming out of a show, complete overshare here one time, man. I remember coming out of a show one time, man, and I like had been pretty constipated going into
Oh yeah.
and that happens a lot going into the show, and I ate a bunch of fatty food post show, and it was like
Yeah.
3 weeks worth of poop came out of me in
Say
2 hours.
you turned it to a slip and slide.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I'm like, my God, I'm still pooping. So I'm sure you're paying attention to that too. I'm always asking people how digestion's going and try to keep on
Oh
top of that
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I was going to ask you, man, and this is something I've kind of started doing. I actually pull the protein down the last couple days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I pull it pretty considerably. So
Yeah,
like,
like I do like cut it in half.
yeah, yeah, sometimes I'll even do less than that, especially if you have someone that where the more carbs you have to have, the harder I'm going to pull your protein, because I just want less food volume in your stomach
Yep.
in the week. Like you and I have talked a bit about Grace. It got to the point where some of her meals, I was doing like 2 ounces of chicken if I was doing
Yeah,
it.
I'll do that with big dudes sometimes.
Yeah,
2, 3 ounces. Yep.
yeah. And then sometimes, like the day before the show, I just won't have them do any protein. You're not building muscle on the Friday before the show. And if have to be really mindful of how much volume we're putting into your GI, the protein's not going to do a monumental amount. And the trace proteins that we're getting from, nut butters or rice or whatever you're using to carb up and add fats in, that's probably going to be enough for the nitrogen retentive purposes to help with your physique. So if it's going to cause you some digestive issues, I don't think it's worth keeping in.
No, I don't either. And it usually just ends up, especially if you're doing any sort of water manipulation at the end, all that protein just ends up sitting in your stomach, and you're distended and uncomfortable
Absolutely.
backstage the day of the show. My God, man, I'm sure you've been backstage at shows. It always smells like a dirty fart back
Dude.
there.
Oh my God. They need to add some sort of scenting to tents,
It's
because
tan and stale farts,
yeah,
man.
and you can't wear deodorant. So no one's
No
wearing deodorant.
deodorant.
Everyone's sweating. It's disgusting. But You know, it's for the love of the game.
Yep, yep. I always laugh at guys like shoveling down these huge meals backstage. I'm like, what the fuck is that going to do?
Dude, so the very first show I ever had a client at, I'm actually pretty sure you were there. It was the DC Pro 3 years ago.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I won that show.
yeah. I like vividly remember seeing you there. I will never forget. I was watching men's physique lineup, and there's a coach that I'm sure you know him. He was local to us. He's taking one knee while his guy's in line doing push-ups, and he's feeding him a Snickers bar, like
Oh my
three
god.
Snickers bars right before going out on stage. And I was
What
like, he's gonna be on stage in 30 seconds. What the hell
what
are
is
you
that going to
doing?
do? What is that going to do?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, some of the weird backstage food rituals are odd to me, man. Like I just like nothing you're going to do in the last, maybe outside of like some fluid and sodium and a little bit of carbs that may help a little bit going going on stage, but it's not going to be anything dramatic.
No, well, and also people do weird stuff with food during peak week in general. Like they'll start having foods they haven't had in 3, 4, 5 months, and you're like,
Yeah,
that's not the time to introduce something.
no,
Just eat the same foods you've been eating, just more of them.
yeah, just change the amounts, just
Yeah.
adjust the amounts. Yeah, I I'm going to ask, and this has sort of been an internal debate I've had going. Do you write out specific diet plans, or are you giving people macros?
That's a really good question. I do a bit of both. So if you're in your off season and you're someone that I know makes good food choices, I'll give you macros. Every meal plan I
Good
write has
food choices. That is the caveat.
yeah. I also send clients like I have like this PDF of what I call like the approved food sources. So if you haven't have any questions, that's pretty easy. But also every meal plan I make has macros on it. But during peak week, you're eating exactly what I tell you to eat.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I've been doing too.
yeah, and with that, I'll send everything over WhatsApp because I just do everything like I get check-ins in the morning and at night for people during peak week. So after I get tonight's check-ins, I'll make their meal plan for the next day. And then I'll see their morning check-ins. If I have to adjust it, I will. And that's how I go through it. And then starting Thursday, we go meal by meal. But for those, I don't let you see any of the numbers. But it's also all over WhatsApp. So you're just getting a text from me saying like meal one, eat XYZ. So you just know what to go eat. But on my sheets, you see all the numbers.
Yeah, man, I'm like going back and forth whether or not I just need to lock people down on prep, because I had a dude recently, and I'm going to call him out. I'm not going to say his name, but he knows who I'm talking about. So I'm not going to publicly embarrass him. But bro wasn't losing weight, and I had him down to 0 carbs and 0 added fats. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I'm like, all right, let's go through everything you're eating, man.
Mhm.
Let's go through all of it. And dude was eating chicken thighs and 80/20 hamburger. And I'm like,
There you
what?
go. There you go.
What? And then he
Yep.
was using condiments on top of it. I'm like, bro, and I'm like, was that on the diet plan? And he's like, it's like, well, I thought you needed some fats in since my everything was so low. And he's like, and the chicken breast is so dry. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, dude.
Welcome to bodybuilding, dude. Get used to it.
You're probably eating 1,000 calories extra on top of what I thought you were.
Yeah. I mean, at least. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all been there where people be like, I'm following the diet to a T. And
They
there have been
never are when you go through the macros.
there have been times where I've said, I want you to send me a picture of everything you put in your mouth for the day. Every time you do it. And then you're like, hey, this is not the meal plan, dude. This is not it.
I'll usually get on the phone with them and I'll just be like, all right, tell me everything. I want to know every condiment, every piece of gum, everything. It's funny. I had Roman Fritz on. We were talking. He's on my podcast, but
Mm.
he was talking about a girl that he was prepping that was eating an entire jug of those like Mentos gum throughout the day, and there's like 100 pieces in them. He's like, she
Yeah.
was just slamming the whole thing, and there's a couple calories in each one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was getting 200-300 calories from chewing gum.
So I've had people, the I can't believe it's not butter spray.
We talked about that too,
Yeah,
man.
people just spraying it into their mouth.
We went through and did the math on it. There is over 1,000 calories in that bottle.
Yeah.
I had
Yes.
no idea. Like Roman was like, that's another one that I can't believe it. It's not butter. People get in trouble with. He said that he said there's like 1,000 calories in that bottle. I'm like, no fucking way. And I looked
Yeah.
it up and I couldn't believe it.
Dude, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing as like movie theater popcorn butter.
Yeah.
I think it's almost the same exact chemical makeup. It's not butter. I don't think it's actual butter. I think it's like butter flavored canola oil or something like
Yeah. It's like butter flavor. It's like the worst kind of shit. You'd be better off probably just eating real butter.
yeah, probably.
Oh my god, man, the stupid shit that people do. Yeah, so like I'm kind of like debating whether or not I just need to spell every fucking thing out for people on prep. I usually give people macros because I try to teach them. I want to teach them how to eat,
Yeah,
and I give them an approved foods list. And I feel like when you give macros, it and put some of the choice in their hand. It makes them think about the food.
yeah.
But some people you just can't trust.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things I got from Dom Kuza was he has this sheet as part of your plan where it's like a 1-to-1 swap sheet. So if your meal plan has 100 grams of rice, but you want to have white potatoes or something, it'll tell you exactly how much to have. And he has that for protein sources, fats, even like in the carbohydrates, there's fruit and stuff. So you can swap things out pretty easily. I let people use that in prep until a certain point, until we're like 6 weeks out, because I want to see, if you're having this high variance in your diet, we're not going to be getting like consistent, maybe GI feedback or what's, fluid retention after a meal look like. So once we get to that 6-ish weeks out mark, I'm like, hey, have you been making any swaps? If so, tell me, because I need to make sure that you and I are on the same page with your food selection. Because when I am peaking people, their meal 1, 3, and 5 are all the same, and their meal 2 and 4 are all the same in terms of their food choices. Obviously, amounts will be a little different, but I really want to narrow down what foods work for you as far as digestion. What do you
Less
enjoy?
variables.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the more you can minimize the variables, the more predictable the peak is.
Yeah, I mean that's been my experience too. Yeah, people make fun of me like when I get down to like the last couple weeks, dude. I'm just eating plain baked ass chicken and plain rice, and then
Yeah,
the only seasoning I use is salt
yeah.
at that point, and that's measured as well. Because like that's another thing. Like I see guys get themselves in trouble with like they don't look at seasonings,
Mhm.
and like there's like a lot of times some of the seasonings have extra calories in them or just a shit ton of sodium
Yeah.
or things like garlic and onion powder that are going to cause gut distress.
Mhm.
It just like I had a guy that was having all kinds of problems with digestion recently, and he was in the seasoning that had shit ton of onion and garlic powder in it. We yanked that, and lo and behold, the gas and bloating went away.
Yeah. Well, dude, even like some of those Melinda's hot sauces that I know are kind of
Yeah,
very
I love
prevalent.
them.
Yeah, I forget which one. One of them, the very first ingredient on the label is either like sugar or corn syrup.
Yeah,
Oh, like I had a guy in prep who's like, "Man, this sweet chili sauce from Melinda's is awesome." I'm like, "What the fuck are you using? You're using that on your chicken? Like you can't use that." And because the serving size on it is 1 teaspoon. He's like, "Well, 1 teaspoon is only 5 calories. It's fine." I'm like, "You no shot. You're using 1 teaspoon. You're
yeah.
probably
There's no
pouring
fucking
that
way you're
all
using one
over."
teaspoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not measuring that shit. Yeah, they're one, and this one's one that'll get. It's gotten me in trouble. They have a truffle flavored one, and there's fat in it.
Yeah. 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 And
It's got
people
truffle
probably
oil in it.
they're probably dumping that all over their food, not
Yep.
thinking about it because it's a hot sauce.
Yeah, people have no idea. But yeah, so those are just little things you need to be careful with. And what do you like as far as fat burning agents now? There's been a big shift, it seems, in bodybuilding this year to more of the mitochondrial enhancers and GLP-1s. That's been a huge thing. What is your take on metabolic enhancers right now?
Yeah. So as a general with the GLP-1s, I've kind of been a big fan of them for a while. I remember when I was doing my master's, we were taking a weight management course that was all about like if you want to be a registered dietitian, counseling people who are obese. And we were talking about a lot of the GLP-1s. At that time, it was just liraglutide, dulaglutide, and semaglutide. And I remember being like, I asked my professor, who is a former bodybuilder, I was like, could bodybuilders use semaglutide? And he's like, I don't really think that would work. And I was like, well, why not? So in 2021, I started dieting. I was working with Alex Kickle at the time, and
Hmm.
I was like, "Hey, man, I want to try semaglutide. Can we do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Let's try it." So I've always really liked those. I really like them as a low dose thing, kind of in the background. I don't want to
Hmm.
totally knock out someone's appetite, but what gets bodybuilders in the most trouble is food focus, and the term is like food noise. So you're walking into the gas station to get a diet soda and pay for your gas, and all you can think about are all the snacks behind you, even if you're not hungry. That's like a classical representation of food noise. And even at some like subclinical doses, these drugs can totally knock that out, whether it's semaglutide or tirzepatide or retatrutide. All of them do that to a similar extent. But kind of like everyone right now, I really like retatrutide for my bodybuilders. Um,
It seems like it's just the perfect fat loss
Dude,
agent for bodybuilders.
it's amazing. And I also really like the SLU. I know SLU's
Hmm.
become pretty popular. I probably run it higher than most people do. I know a lot of people are only taking like 250 to 500
I've been
micrograms.
running it higher too, like up to 1,000 milligrams, even 1,500.
I might have you beat. I have some 20 milligram tabs that I've been
Oh,
personally taking.
holy shit. That's high.
Yeah, well, I think with
Are you
the
sweating through your shirt?
no, no, look, I'm wearing a sweatshirt right now. I'm all right. Um, But I think if you look at the rat data and you extrapolate it out, which obviously there's probably gonna be some people that don't like that I do that, but there are ways that you can say like, hey, if we give rats X amount of drugs, what is the human amount of that?
Hmm.
I believe with SLU, it comes out to being like close to 4 milligrams per kilogram. You can take
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that high.
somewhat safely. I'm not saying to go run out and take that much. I don't know anyone that's taken that much, but like I feel pretty comfortable around that 20 milligram mark. I have some clients doing like 5 milligrams, and I really like that a lot. Where I think it really has good benefit is for people who can't tolerate clenbuterol or they can't tolerate much of it. So if you're someone that 40 micrograms of clen, you're good, but 60 has you like freaking out in terms of anxiety or heart rate. Um, we can use SLU as either an alternative or an additive to that. And I really, really like that. Um, and then just like I guess some of the more normal stuff like yohimbine and then T3 if it's needed, if thyroid output is looking poor. I don't like to drive people hyperthyroid. I know probably like some other coaches, I've done that in the past where I've been like, hey, we should do like 50 micrograms of T3. And yes, it gets people lean, but it just gets them a little too stringy
Hmm.
depending on the person.
Yeah,
So
it's been my experience with it too.
yeah, I find 37 and a half for a lot of people is kind of that sweet spot where, yes, we're a little over our natural thyroid output, but we're not so high that we're getting stringy. So that's kind of if you're a client of mine, we're probably on some combination of Reta, SLU, clenbuterol, and or some T3. That's kind
That
of my
sounds exactly the way I do it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's funny how we all just come to the same conclusions on shit.
yeah.
I used to run ECY or ECY stacks, but a lot of people don't tolerate them well.
Yeah, dude, like if I take any like stimulants really I'm super sensitive to them. Where like if I take more than 40 micrograms of clen, I'm like bugging out. My eyes look dilated. I'm sweating profusely. It looks like I'm taking DNP when I'm taking too much clen. I'm sweating through all my clothes. It's not a good look. So
Yeah, and I'm starting to come full circle on really managing sleep and fatigue, and it just seems like after a while, after you drive your sympathetic nervous system so hard, it just catches it. You can only do it for so long, and it fucking
yeah,
catches up with you,
yeah,
and starts to go the other way. You start looking bad, and
yeah,
it's like you get dug into this hole you can't get out of.
yeah. When you refeed people, do you pull their clen out for the day?
Yeah, I don't run any stimulants on high days.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I started doing that a couple years ago,
Mhm.
but if nothing else, just to get people sleeping.
Yep. Mostly that's what it is for me. It's just to get them to
Yeah,
sleep and to
yeah,
relax.
and, my thought process is you're not burning fat on that day anyway,
Exactly.
so what's the point in having these in
Mhm.
anyway, and let's dump the caffeine, let's dump all the stimulants on that day, get a shit ton of carbs in, and then even just with the insulin response to the carbs, that alone should make you sleep better.
Yeah. Well, and even on some of those days with people, depending on where we are in prep, I'm like, hey, don't go to the gym today. I'd rather you go home and take an hour and a half long nap.
Yeah,
That's going to
sometimes I'll
do
do
more
that
for your
too.
physique than the training would.
I'll usually still have them train just because it feels good to train when you have
Yeah.
all that.
No, it does.
Yeah, I like, like usually that the high day, I'll have people in prep put it on a leg day because it's the highest energy
Mhm,
output day, just so they can get a good leg training session in.
mhm.
But I'll have them yank cardio. I only do cardio usually 6 days a week. I'll yank the cardio that day, and I won't have them do any stimulants on that day, especially if we get later in the prep.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll actually start sprinkling in extra high days or
Yeah.
like half high days. I
Mhm.
keep the fat as low as I possibly can on those days and then push the carbs really high.
Yeah.
Pull the protein down.
Yeah, I keep the protein and fats pretty constant between high and low days. The only thing that I really change is carbs. Mostly, it just keeps it easy for the person. They only have one thing to think about. It's why are my
Yeah,
carbs different today?
it's a little more complicated, but I find that it's just kind of been messing around with things
Mhm.
that especially with big dudes, like big, like open class bodybuilders, like you can really get aggressive with the carbs if you keep the fats low on those days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it just blows them back up. Like and that's the problem with like super big guys. They flatten out so easy.
yeah. And it takes a
Um,
lot to get them to fill out.
I was doing 2,000 grams of carbs on my days on my
Yeah,
prep last year.
yeah, yeah. I'm
I mean,
not shocked. So,
I was also on stage at 250, but
yeah,
you're not going to do that with a bikini competitor,
right,
obviously.
right, right.
But yeah, it was pretty wild effect. Yeah, the Retatrutide, man. I'm telling you, like I'm really starting to think if guys shouldn't just run a low dose of that year round. The improvements on blood panels I saw with me, like with me and some of my clients, like my LDL dropped in half.
Yeah, yeah,
My ApoB dropped in half.
yeah. The
My
ApoB
triglycerides
crazy.
dropped in half too, man.
Right. Well, I mean, even some of the big things we worry about with bodybuilders is like our kidneys and our brain health. That's something that's maybe a little more secondary in like a competitor's mind, but you and I know very well that the kidneys and the brain take a lot of abuse
Oh, I
from
know some crazy
work.
ass old bodybuilders
Yeah,
completely lost their fucking minds. All
yeah.
you gotta do is go around social media, you can find them. Dudes that have
well,
fried their heads on trend.
well, and Retta helps with both of those things as well.
Yep.
So there's some benefit there. And then one of the other things is like, we keep talking about the sleep. If it can stop someone from going to bed hungry in prep, that's insanely valuable.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. And in the off season, yeah, you don't need much, like 0.5 milligrams. You'll get some pretty robust changes. And I'll probably stop guys from cheating on their diet more in the off season.
Yeah.
People tend to get a little loose in the off season. It stops it a little bit.
Hey, coach, I was a little off point. I can always tell, man. I look at the check-in pictures and the math doesn't add up. I'm like, huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Somebody had a couple extra visits to McDonald's this week.
yeah. More
I
than the
don't
one allotted
I don't
food.
I don't give people a hard time about it in the off season usually, but I will say this, man, the guys that or competitors that take the huge steps forward, this, man, they treat their off season like a contest prep.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what's crazy is a lot of my girls are that way. Like a lot of my girls are more locked in than the guys are in their off season.
Well, I keep bringing up Grace, but I saw her progress over the last 2 years has just been profound.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna venture to guess that she's always locked in.
Yeah, yeah. So the very first question on my check-in form is rating from 1 to 10. How well did you adhere to the plan? If Grace marks an 8, it's maybe once a year, and there's 99% of the time it's tens and nines, and a 9 will be like, I worked a 12-hour overnight shift in the ER, so one day my steps were 2,000 short because I came home and fell asleep. I'm like, all right, we're okay there. We're good.
Well, it's not a coincidence that the people that stay the most locked in have the best progress. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just I it's that's always been sort of like a confounding, frustrating thing for me is everybody's looking for the secret to improvement, and really the secret that nobody wants to hear is consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, people, I mean, I'm sure you get this a lot, especially with like some younger guys. They're coming to you expecting to have a secret drug stash.
Yeah, the cycle, they want the protocol, and then I give them the test Primo GH
Yeah.
protocol.
Yeah.
They're like, "What?"
Dude,
Where
I I've heard guys where like they I can see exactly where I was when I had this conversation. There's a guy telling me the difference between him being an amateur and being a professional is the fact that he was using generic GH instead of Serostim. And I was like, bro, I've seen your training videos. It's not the Serostim or generic GH that's stopping you from being a professional. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I promise you that taking Serostim's not gonna be the
Yeah,
difference. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like me some Serostim, but,
yeah.
it's my coach, Justin Harris, talks about it all the time. He's like, "Everybody gets focused on the 1% when they don't have the 99 buttoned up."
Yeah, one of the things like my very first mentor, my background in training is strength and conditioning. So
Mhm.
my mentor for that, um, he would tell me all the time. He was like, "Don't step over the $100 bills to pick up pennies," because I would get so bent out of shape
Yeah,
about small
yeah.
nuance that I'd miss the big steps. And he's like, "Dude, focus on the big stuff first." And that's something I repeat to people all the time now.
Yeah, and that's the trap that usually it's funny because I'm gonna sound terrible saying this, but usually the dumb guys do the best because they'll just follow orders.
Yeah,
It's the people that are super smart that overanalyze shit and get caught up on the minutia. Like they a lot of times they end up, yeah, exactly that, tripping over pennies chasing dollars.
yeah,
Or tripping over dollars chasing pennies. Sorry, I
yeah.
got that backwards. But yeah, it's I managed a staff of really smart people for 20 years. I worked in IT. I was CEO of an IT company, and I ran into this problem all the time with my engineers. They're just like would overcomplicate. Like they would be looking for like some super complex solution to a problem, and I'd be like, "Is the cord plugged in?"
Yeah, yeah,
And
it happens
they're
all the
like,
time.
well, that's not what's going on here. That's what not why there's an outage." I'm like, why don't we start with the basics first?
Yeah,
See if the shit's plugged in.
yeah, well,
And
well, go ahead.
it's the same thing. Like if you're not weighing and measuring your food, the osmolarity of your intra workout shake is not going to make fuck
Oh
all.
my god. Yeah, yeah, like, there's a I have a client right now, he's not a competitor, he's a lifestyle guy that, he sent me, like, a really long-winded message about autophagy and fasting and this, that, the other, in the same check-in that he was like, "Hey, I binged 3 times over the weekend. I was about 3,000 calories over per day." I'm like, "Dude, you're talking about fasting, you can't even stick to a meal plan, like, why are we even talking about autophagy?"
Well, look, I mean, I love getting into the weeds. I love
Yeah.
getting into the nitty gritty detail. You clearly you're a dude that's pretty much finished a PhD, man. That's we like getting into detail, but you gotta before you get into the detail, you got to make sure the other shit's buttoned up. Like if you're Nick Walker and you got your shit buttoned up and you're trying for an Olympia title,
Mhm.
that little extra stuff matters.
Yeah. Yeah, when you are totally on your shit, 1 and 2% changes really
That's the
add
difference
up.
between winning a show and getting second place.
Yeah.
But for most people,
Yeah.
get the basics buttoned up.
Yeah, if you're still, batting 60% adherence on your plan all the time, talking about minutia over,
It's not going to matter.
supplements or anything like that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's the biggest lesson I wish I could impart on people. Everybody's looking for the secret. It's really just being consistent, just being doing the boring shit, man.
Mhm. It's like, have you seen all the buzz about the sugar diet? It's the same shit.
Yeah, yeah. I've got thoughts and feelings on that, but I'm gonna be nice.
I imagine our thoughts and feelings are probably quite similar.
Yeah, because some of the people that are doing it I like, but I'm
Oh,
just like,
okay.
I'm just like, it's good for views. I'll just say that.
That's exactly what I say. I'm like, it's good. I like it if I'm trying to draw eyes to my page.
It's good for views. And the hilarious thing is that the principle of it is essentially what you're doing on a high day anyway.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking thing.
Yep. Yep.
Same thing. All right, man, I got to wrap this up. Where can people get a hold of you, man, if they're interested in coaching or want to talk to you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is just through Instagram. I'm on there probably way too much. My handle, it's at mike.ryan.white. You can just drop me a DM. I'm usually pretty responsive there. Maybe the only day you'll hear from me is Sunday, but rest of the week I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
And I'll put it in the video description below,
Cool.
folks. So if you want to get a hold of Mike, that's the place to do it. He's a smart dude.
Thank you.
Gets people in shape. So if you want to get ripped and work with a smart guy that's got some common sense, Mike is probably your man.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, hang tight.